Just a quick heads up before we launch into the show today. Next week, we're going to be having a bit of a disrupted schedule in that we won't be producing a show on Thursday, Friday, or the following Monday. I have two back-to-back events that will be keeping me on the road at just the right time to knock me out of contention to produce. On that note, I would encourage you to come out to the New York City Bar Association's New York City headquarters next Thursday, where I'll be moderating a panel discussion about the future of adult use marijuana in the state of New York. That panel will be packed with expert speakers, including New York State Senator Liz Krueger, chair of the state's Finance Committee. The New York City Bar's headquarters is located at 42 West 44th Street in New York City, and the event runs from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. You can search for the New York City Bar Association on the web to find more on this event. Big thanks to Elena, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right, who's involved with the Bar Association and who listens to the show and suggested me as a moderator. I very much appreciate that. And if you're in Virginia Beach next weekend playing in the Ultimate Frisbee Beach Nationals like I will be doing after the panel discussion in New York City, you should also say hello, though I won't be holding my breath for that to happen. I still play competitive ultimate frisbee at the ripe age of 41, and I'll be running around on the beach for a couple of days next weekend. So long story short, we'll be back after our long weekend next weekend on Tuesday, if that makes sense. This episode of Marijuana Today Daily is brought to you by our friends over at Curaleaf, one of the nation's fastest growing multi-state cannabis operators with 44 local dispensaries, 12 cultivation sites, and 11 processing facilities, serving up more than 150,000 registered medical marijuana patients. Learn more about Curaleaf over at curaleaf.com, with Curaleaf spelled C-U-R-A-L-E-A-F. Good morning, Marijuana Nation. It's Friday, May 3rd, 2019, and you're tuned in to episode 718 of Marijuana Today Daily. I'm your host, Shay Gunther, and I'll be walking you through today's marijuana news and headlines. As always, we have a full and busy day of cannabis news in our hands, so let's jump right into it. As seems to be happening more often lately, we lead off today with news of a large acquisition coming out of Canada, as Canadian marijuana giant Canopy Growth, flush with the billions of dollars invested into it by booze conglomerate Constellation Brands last year, announced it was buying Cannabinoid Compound Company, or C3, a corporation based in Germany specializing in the formulation of synthetic cannabinoids. Canopy will pay just over $250 million in cash for C3, giving it a solid base of operations to tap into the European market. Alan Brockstein's New Cannabis Ventures has more on this one. As always, we have all the news we cover linked to on our website at mjtodaydaily.com. We return to Michigan for our second top story. Yesterday, news broke that the state's newly empowered cannabis regulatory body, the Marijuana Regulatory Agency, has reinstalled a rule banning medical marijuana provisioning centers from buying untested cannabis products directly from caregivers, who have historically supplied most of the state's medical marijuana, as licensed commercial grows have slowly spooled up. Caregivers will still be free to sell their marijuana into the legal system. They'll just need to do so through licensed growers or processors, who must then test out any cannabis before putting it on the market. Untested products bought before April 30th will be grandfathered in and can be sold just as long as it's disclosed to patients. Michigan Radio is a good sum up of all the important notes and details on this one, so you should pop over there if you do any kind of business in Michigan. Our final top story of the day and the week is some good news out of Vermont, where yesterday the state's House Committee on Government Operations approved a bill setting up a taxed and regulated sales system by a 10-1 vote. The bill, if turned into law, would create a sales program in the state where it's now legal to grow, possess, use, and share cannabis, setting up a tax rate of 16%, which would raise an estimated $4 to $8 million in tax revenue in the first year. The bill has already been approved by the state Senate and now has to survive trips through the House Appropriations and Ways and Means committees before it can be considered by the full House. After that, it still faces Vermont Governor Phil Scott, who has stated his opposition to any bill that doesn't allow cops to conduct roadside saliva tests on drivers suspected of operating after consumption. despite the fact that no such test exists that tells you anything about a person's current state of marijuana intoxication. In a nod to the governor's position, lawmakers added a provision to the bill allowing police to test a person's saliva, but only after getting a warrant and only at a police station and not on the side of the road. Those are our top stories for today. It's time for Marijuana Today Daily Headlines Blitz. Before we blitz out in headlines, let's quickly thank our sponsor, Curaleaf, one of the nation's fastest growing multi-state cannabis operators. With 44 local dispensaries, 12 cultivation sites, and 11 processing facilities, serving up more than 150,000 registered medical marijuana patients. Curaleaf is proud to be supporting the Veterans Cannabis Project, the leading organization that advocates for unrestricted and supported access of medical marijuana for military veteran patients. Curaleaf is launching a nationwide initiative with the Veterans Cannabis Project to help raise awareness of the issue and funds for this vital cause. Swing over to curaleaf.com and find the link for the Veterans Cannabis Project under About Us, and then swing over to vetscp.org directly to learn more about this very cool organization. That's curaleaf.com and vetscp.org. All right. Time for the Blitz. According to new numbers released by Stats Canada, more Canadians than ever are trying cannabis for the first time, which you would certainly expect to see in the wake of nationwide legalization. The rise in new first-time users is strongest in the 45 to 64-year-old range, as a total of 18% of all Canadians 15 years and older report having consumed in the past 3 months, up from 14% last October when adult use legalization flipped on. CBC News has more on that, including a link to the actual report itself, which you should get into the habit of clicking through to. Matt Lamers over Marijuana Business Daily keeps our sights pegged up in Canada for another headline with an interesting pickup of a newly issued marijuana business license type by Health Canada that will allow for the cultivation of cannabis clones and seeds. Right now, the Canadian market is short on available clones and seeds and long on expensive options, with average prices running in the $10 to $20 per seed range. Alberta-based Implanta Biotechnology was just issued the country's first marijuana nursery license and says they want to get prices down for consumers and increase the available range of cultivation genetic options. Up here in my corner of the country in Maine, we have news that the state's Office of Marijuana Policy has awarded a provisional seed-to-sale tracking contract with Florida-based BioTrack THC, whose system will be used to monitor the flow of marijuana plants in our soon-to-launch adult-use sales program, expected to come online sometime this year, as well as in our existing medical program. Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser announced yesterday that she will be introducing legislation to the City Council to create a taxed and regulated sales program. Washington, D.C. is a little like Vermont in that marijuana is legal to grow, possess, use, and share, but not to sell. But unlike Vermont, that's not really because the citizens of Washington, D.C. have decided to ban sales, but because Republicans in the U.S. Congress have taken it upon themselves to restrict the city from exerting local control over their own affairs. So while the bill to be introduced by Mayor Bowser would allow for legal sales, it wouldn't actually go into effect until House lawmakers change the law to allow them to. The Washington Post has a good, detailed write-up of this one. MarketWatch has a really interesting piece up looking at the behind-the-scenes financial juggling that took place last year within the Canadian licensed marijuana company Tilt Holdings, which saw within the span of a month the loss of $500 million as it wrote off something called a goodwill impairment charge, which is basically what happens when a big company has something it thinks or thought was a lot more valuable than it really is. Financial news is far from my strong suit, and I might be missing some key points, so I'd suggest you open up MarketWatch for the full dive in on this one. Randy Robinson over at Mary Jane noticed a notice issued just last week by the Federal Alcohol and Tobacco Tax Trade Bureau, a division of the U.S. Department of Treasury that officially bans the use of any kind of cannabis-infused alcoholic drink, even as federal restrictions on the cultivation of industrial hemp have fallen away. And finally for today and for the week, we have some good news for fans of both cannabis and snacky foods, as global food giant Mondelez, which makes Oreos, Chips Ahoy cookies, Nilla wafers, and Nutter Butters, says that it is eyeing the marijuana-infused market. Before you get your hopes up for cannabis Oreos, though, know that Mondelez CEO Dirk Van de Putte said that if his company did dip into producing edibles, it would be using CBD and other cannabinoids that don't get you high and would be creating entirely new products rather than infusing current brands. But a guy can dream. Those are the headlines and news for the day. I'll be back with you Monday morning with another information-packed episode of Marijuana Today Daily. But in the meantime, if you have any stories to share or feedback to give, zip us an email to headlines@mjtodaydaily.com. And while you're clicking around the interwebs, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com to find links to all the news we cover. Thanks to our sponsor, Curaleaf, and to all of our awesome Patreon listeners for the support that makes this show possible. To join the illustrious ranks of the Patreon listeners yourself, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com and click on that big blue button at the top of the page that says Become a Patron. I'm your host, Shay Gunther. Thanks for tuning in and starting your day with marijuana today. Today.
One take, Shay. One take.